la Bretonne. I am the Chancellor of the University of Atlantia, and actually I was at Oswin about 2 years ago in my capacity as Chancellor through a mutual friend. And this is my first class teaching outside of, I've taught outside of Kingdom. I've taught at Penzic, I've taught at other wars and stuff. And I did offer some classes through the Honorable Clover earlier this year, but this is my first officially for a different university. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I actually had this class requested. I created it a couple of years ago as a local class. Folks were looking to try to figure out how they could use the experience within the SCA and turn it into something that they could use in their job search and help them kind of figure out how to translate what we do in the SCA into something that can help you in the modern world. And honestly, a lot of what we do does translate, and that's one of the things we'll touch on. I am more than willing to answer questions as we go on. I am going to present some concepts. We're going to talk about stuff. If something isn't clear, please tell me. If I get excited, I tend to talk quickly. So I will have to remind myself to slow down. I also can have a very Southern accent at times on certain words. So if I smush something and you don't understand what I said, please let me know. I've been in the SCA since 1995. I joined as a freshman in college. And my very first job out of college I got because I knew somebody in the SCA. And they said, hey, we have a job opening. Second job out of college, same thing. Third job out of college, same thing. And that's actually the job that I'm at now. And I've been there almost 18 years at this point. But it is my SCA experience that has gotten me the current job that I'm in. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I did create a PowerPoint for today. So just to give us something to talk at. And again, let's just go with that and sharing. Okay, so hopefully you have the PowerPoint plus me. And I've got the film strip of people that is kind of awkward, but I'll deal. And so, like I said, my name is Adriana. In the SCA, I've been a landed baroness, I've been an autocrat, I've been a chancellor for the university, I've been a seneschal. I've done a couple different things. Modernly, I do communications and marketing for a library software company. My undergraduate degree is in journalism and my master's degree is in library science. So that's where I'm coming back. That's my educational background. And that may kind of help you understand where it is I'm coming from. My email address is on the front slide if you do want to reach me. If you have questions afterwards, please let me know. It's veronasadriana@gmail.com. I'm more than willing to answer questions today, tomorrow, ongoing. So let's go ahead and get started.
Before you get too far, we already have a question in the chat.
Okay.
That probably should address so the person understands where we're coming from. The question is, will we talk about creating an SCA resume?
We are not tonight. This is not SCA resume. This is making your SCA experience work for your modern resume. If this was something that you wanted to talk about for SCA resume, to me, an SCA resume is very similar to a professional resume in that you have you're listing, these are the positions I've held, this is what I did. But the focus for tonight is more career-wise. I hope that clarifies. And I'm sorry if that disappoints you. So the first thing that basically, as we go through, we're going to talk about making this volunteer work that we do, have that work for you. Identifying what you've done, how can you use that as going forward, translating some of the words that we use in the SCA into corporate speak, because yeah, we talk a different language. We have to admit it. I've got some examples for you, and then I've got a couple of resources that I used to put together this presentation. So one of the first questions you have to ask is, what have you done that could be useful for a future employer? There's a lot of different things that we do as officers, that we do helping with events, that we're just doing in our helping this organization to run, that you don't necessarily think about translating, but it really does work for you. Leading others. If you've ever coordinated even a fighter practice, and you had to like get people together to a certain point, and you had to collaborate with them and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're doing it on this day, and get them together. If you are doing project management, if you've ever done an ANS project and you've actually outlined the project from start to finish, and then done the documentation and presented it, that is project management. So is autocrating an event. Even putting together a class for this is technically a project that I worked on, and managing that project from start to finish is project management. Also practicing effective communication. There's a lot of things in the SCA where we're working with online communication methods. We're having to deal with a lot of different personality types. Sometimes that can be challenging because we're not all the same type of people. We're not coming from the same background all the time. So learning to listen, learning to moderate conversations, very important. Problem solving. I mean, I've literally run an event where we're cooking a feast and the stove goes out. It's how do you work under pressure? And that kind of thing. Working as part of a team, obviously, collaborating with others. The Kingdom Minister of Arts and Sciences here in Atlantia just announced a new effort that they're going to do a teamwork ANS, I think competition, if not competition display. It's basically going to be an ongoing get people together to create a work, which is really kind of cool. But that is absolutely collaborating as a team. Conducting research, that's huge when it comes to a lot of data analytics jobs, even just being able to do like customer service. You need to be able to go back through maybe old tickets when it comes to, was this a problem before? So that these are all skills that we learn. And then follow through, making sure that you take something to completion. All of these different things are things that employers look for when you're going to look for a job. And there are things that we do in the SCA that you may not think that is applicable, but it totally is. I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, so so what have you done as a volunteer that's useful? Specifically when it comes to officers, there's a lot of documentation involved in being an officer, yearly and quarterly reports, writing down what it is that you've done, creating agendas for business meetings, actually running the business meeting, managing people. Like if you've been a seneschal and you're having to have like a review of your financial policy, you're totally working with a bunch of people in financial. You're doing asset management. If you're an exchequer, you're keeping track of what the group has. You're doing budgets if you're running an event as an event steward or as a seneschal. You're also doing stats and metrics. How many people attended your event? How many people came to your business meeting? These are things that you're having to report, because as a 501c3 organization, part of what we have to do is prove that we're educational. And a lot of that comes from numbers. So for us, for University of Atlantia, one of the things I am big on is how many classes are we teaching? How many teachers do I have? How many people are registering? And then at the end of the day, if I can get an accurate count of how many people attended and from how many different groups, those are big things that I can pull and say, look, this is what we're doing as an ongoing effort for this international 501c3 nonprofit educational organization. So all of those different pieces and parts that you're like, oh, I have to fill out another Exchequer report. Yeah, but that's also teaching you skills that can be used in a modern job as well. We also develop a lot of technology skills in our positions. Honestly, I came in with I started SCA 95, so internet was just kind of new, and I was coming into starting to learn to do HTML. And honestly, I learned more coding as I started doing websites for my boyfriend at the time, because he was an arts person and wanted to publish his lyrics for the songs that he was performing. So I kind of did his webpage, one of the first web pages I ever published. Yeah, I just dated myself a lot. Okay.
No worries.
But then I got into doing blogging, because that was how I connected with SCA members across the East Coast. So I got onto early blog sites and then moved to LiveJournal, and then moved from LiveJournal to Facebook, and have kept up literally with people that I started my first blog with. I'm still connected with, and I've developed ongoing skill sets of using these different platforms as I did that. And that was just I wanted to socially stay connected, but it ended up being useful because I'm now the social media manager for my company. But I've also had to do things like Excel, and heck, I created a PowerPoint for this class tonight, and things that I learned at work, I'm taking back to the SCA, and things that I'm working in the SCA, I'm taking back to work. Social networking, absolutely. I run the Facebook page for the university. I ran it for my local barony when I was a landed baroness. One of my big passions is effective communication online, and it's making sure that people know where they need to be at what time, and having them be able to find the information quickly and effortlessly, if at all possible. So web page management, I mean, there's a whole freaking office for doing web pages for this group, and now it's intertied with the social media deputies that we have and that office. We have so much data management and information management that we're having to handle. I mean, and coming into COVID, dear Lord, I never knew that I would need to collaborate with our Kingdom Web Minister as much as I am now. University of Atlantia absolutely relied on our web minister's expertise, and he taught us stuff and we taught him stuff, and we've really got a strong working relationship, and I learned so much from him as we came in and started doing this. But at the same time, he's learned some things about communication styles that I had brought in from experience from promoting events and being an autocrat and helping a group to stay successful and come together when I was a landed baroness. And most recently, online event management and online training. These are things I learned in the SCA. And guess what? I'm running my first professional online conference come June. And I've already will have run 3 online universities for Atlantia prior to running the professional conference this coming June 2021. And I don't think I would have been as confident going into it had I not had my SCA experience running universities online. So I'm being pulled and pushed in a number of different directions, and it's taken a lot of energy, but it's exciting at the same time, and it's absolutely helped me in my professional career, and I really really feel like I said, it's my professional career has also pushed me in the SCA as well. So, so what kind of volunteer experience can you use if you served as an officer? We talked about being an exchequer, service as event staff, anywhere from being, the gatekeeper, taking reservations, even the head cook. They have to plan a menu, go through a budget. They run a team in the kitchen. They're working with scheduling and timing and doing the follow-up. There's marshaling. You're having to, so in Atlantia, all of the marshals collaborate with our ministers of the list to run tournaments. So there's teamwork and timing that has to happen, especially for things like crown turning. I mean, all of that is very collaborative, leadership oriented, communication necessary, and you have to listen and share information as you go through the day. Awards that you've received. I happen to have a Pelican, and one of the things that was recommended to me is that I could say that it was basically like a senior, make sure was subject matter expert in operational activities. You can claim yourself to be a mentor or coach if you have students. Same with Laurel or Ignite. You're actually within a mentorship relationship with another person. Part of senior leadership advisory committee. You're giving counsel to the crown as a peer. One way I've seen it put is society operational activities experts. I know that's a little like corporate ease, but at the same time it translates. And that's one of the biggest things that we have trouble with people understanding is we've done these things, but you say pelican to somebody and they go, bird, what, silly, I don't understand. And you're like, no, I've put a lot of work into this and it's really a thing. Same with a Laurel, same with a Knight, same with a Mod. Royal peers, we have all done so much work. Even if you've gotten whatever award it is, you've been recognized for work that you've done in whatever area that was bestowed to you for, from the AOA level to whatever. You have accomplished something and you have been rewarded by a person in the organization for what the thing that you have accomplished. But the thing is,
related to that, Adriana, I've seen like kingdom level officers refer to themselves in a professional resume setting, like as regional vice president.
Yes.
Something on those levels. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have that. Certainly it was appropriate. But yeah, look for an equivalent type of title.
I actually have a slide on that
you can refer to
in just a few minutes.
Sure.
For equivalent, which is that SCA jargon to corporate speak. The other thing is focus on the skills that you received the award for rather than the actual award itself. List the things that you did to get it. Is there anything else that we can think of that? Because I'm trying to make sure that y'all understand that it's not just, yes, we volunteer as staff, yes, we volunteer as officers, but there's other things we do within the organization. Like I said, A&S projects, cooking, it all can be translated and usable.
In the chat, someone's is mentioning demos as public relations.
Absolutely. Question. That's huge. Marketing. If you are helping to, if you're running like a newcomers night on your Zoom platform or your Facebook or something like that, that's a PR. That's community outreach even. Mm-hmm. So, yes.
Wouldn't being a marshal be something like safety officer?
Yeah, yes, it would. And like I said, I do have a table here in a minute, and we'll get into a lot of that. So, and that's actually one of the hardest things is coming up with the right terminology and how to use it. So I've got a couple examples, but if there's other people that have, safety officer or whatever, please. So the biggest thing is don't use SCA terminology because they don't know what it is. You know, if possible, list the things relevant to what you do or want to do. So if you're applying for a specific job, like if I'm going for the job that I came into, I knew part of it was going to be conference planning, and this is the job that I hold now. So I listed my relevant experience being an autocrat for SCA events. And that absolutely translated over because I was running budgets, I was doing vendor relations, I was managing teams, I was working with contracts. There's a lot of overlap from the SCA event planning to come into doing the conference planning that I do now as part of my job. So that was a big up for me to come in and say, I've done this. Use the SCA size and age to your advantage. We are a 50-year-old organization. We are a 501c3 international nonprofit. We have an international presence in over 30 countries at this point, I believe. I don't know the exact number. And we do have over 30,000 paid members participating. That's a big thing. I will say when I list on my resume, I do SCA, Inc. I don't list out the Society for Creative Anachronism because people look at that and go, huh? So just doing SCA Inc. dash, international nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. It sounds much more impressive that way. And it really is. If you think about it, we are a global organization. Use your relevant SCA experience in your summary statement as well. Usually there's a summary statement at the top of a resume or in your cover letter. If you're going for a job that some of your experience is absolutely key for, like I said, with my event planning and the conference planning in my current position, that's something I listed, event planning for average of 200 attendees or, whatever. Team and leadership skills, are they more important to the job that you're applying for, or is it more of an individual and self-directed? If it's individual and self-directed, list your ANS projects that you had to work on your own versus I was a seneschal and I had to work with all these different people. Okay. And listing it as if you have a gap in employment due to whatever, it could be you chose to stay home with a child, you could, maybe you were furloughed during COVID. If you've been doing something SCA wise, list it as relevant experience to kind of cover that gap where you may not have had paid employment, but you're still doing something. So, because sometimes people are, why weren't you working for the 6 months? Well, I was doing this thing, and cover it that way.
So 2 things from the comments, if I can.
Go ahead.
From the chat. So we have Antonio saying another kind of skill, I guess, from the comment here, would be high-level research that may have gone into an ANS project or a course that you develop.
Right.
Really good there, yeah. And then Elizabeth mentioning she calls her work organizing the History Hall, for the SCA 50 History Hall project management.
There you go.
So absolutely.
Yeah. And if you've been published in an SCA newsletter or our Kingdom newsletter, The Oak or something, you have published articles. You can list that under published works. There's a lot of different ways that you can leverage what you've done. Documented ANS projects, especially if you have used some sort of academic documentation method, you do have experience doing academic-based research there. And that's, using databases, coalescing the information, putting it into a format that can be then presented. So you've got writing, you've got editing, you've got actual creation of it. If you put it online somewhere, that's, working with maybe a blog style platform. This is all experiences that you can literally use to your advantage. In the resume itself, sometimes there's a question of where do you list that experience. If it's related to the career or the position that you're applying for, put it under a relevant professional experience. It's not a job itself, but it can go under a heading, relevant professional experience, because that's exactly what it is. If you want to share some of what you've done, but it's not particularly relevant to the position or what you're looking for immediately, volunteer or community service is actually a really good heading to use. People like to see individuals that are well-rounded, and listing a little bit of outside work stuff, volunteer work or whatever, is actually really beneficial to some employers and some positions. It lets them see that you don't live and die at work. So what's the best way to make yourself relevant? Start asking just, what does your experience entail? I mean, what is the gist of everything that you've done? And is it going to benefit what you do or what you want to do? Does it make you sound like a more well-rounded individual? That was what I was just saying a minute ago. And then if you know industry appropriate terminology, use that in your description. So there's I'm pulling from an article called Making the SCA Work for You. Exchequer is accounting, AP, and AR, budget balancing, reconciliation, and annual reporting. So if you're in accounting, you know what all that means if you're in that field. And if you've been an exchequer, you can absolutely list all of that. Yeah, accounts payable, accounts receivable, but listing it as AP, AR, and you're applying for an accounting position, somebody's going to be like, they know what the heck they're talking about. So this is the part where we get into translating the SCA jargon into the corporate speak, because this can sometimes be that, like, I don't know where I'm going from here, because I know that I've done stuff, but how do I make it sound like I am a professional and you should hire me? So autocrat, event manager, and project manager. Be sure to be specific when you're using this kind of thing. Talk about the size of the event and how long it was. I have autocratted an event that was for 300 people, and it was one day event. Okay, that's pretty cool. But did you do a 4-day event for 75? Okay, well, that's a longer event, less people. But each of those is a different skill set, and takes a different type of management to put together. I came from doing 1 day, couple hundred people events, to my professional conference that I run is usually typically under 100, but it's a 4-day conference. So it translates, but it's still a little different. And I do use autocrat specifically because that is what translates into my current position. Specific skill sets that I was able to use: contract negotiation, scheduling, delegation, marketing, site evaluation, event bid preparations, budgeting. I mean, these are, follow through. All of this was specific to doing autocrating, but it absolutely gave me a step up in applying for my current position. So this is just the first example. If you're an officer, we're going to talk about that appropriate modern job title. Like I said, that's coming here very shortly. But you were all part of an SCA management team. And you all use skills that are absolutely applicable to a modern job equivalent. And if at all possible, just make sure you list the size of the branch, regional, local, society level, for which you were an officer, and make sure you list the dates. Because a 2-year versus a 4-year, or if you're in a smaller group versus a larger barony. I mean, my barony is 300 plus people, but we have 5 smaller cantons within it. So if you're a canton officer, you're dealing with less people, but they meet more often. So they do weekly meetings versus our Barony is like 300 people, but they meet once a month. But all of that is very relevant and very good information. If you're running a once a week meeting for 20 people, that's still a big effort. Okay, this is that big list of stuff we were talking about. And again, this is actually from This Is Your Life, This Is Your SCA Life. This article was really helpful, and it's one of the two things that I pulled from when I was putting this together, as well as my own personal experience. When you're looking at SCA office or experience, real life terms, the team or leadership skills demonstrated, and then the individual or self-directed skills. So for a branch or principality officer, or possibly a pelican, you're a volunteer. You have project management, management team for the administration. You're working with reporting, you're in reports. You can see I've left commas because there's more there that can be listed. If it's event related, you're event coordinator, volunteer committee organizer, member, banquet head, head cook. You're dealing with team management, with scheduling, selecting volunteers and delegation. Again, arranging vendors, signing contracts, site evaluation, insurance. If you have to get like the equestrian rider or equestrian stuff, creating progress reports, menus, wrap-up reports. If you do after action or whatever you call them for the group afterwards. If you're royalty, chapter or regional director, ceremonial head, team management, project and ceremony development, you review and create policy, literally. As a seneschal, you're the president or the administrative officer for your local group. You oversee chapter volunteers, you sign legal contracts, you do reports, you do policy review, and you do performance evaluations, especially if you have people that report to you. You also might be involved in
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution. Yes, exactly. Thank you for reading my sign language there.
No, I just know the kind of thing a seneschal may have to do.
Yes, I do too. Conflict resolution. Yes. I was coming up with sanctions and sanctions and grievances, and I wasn't getting the conflict resolution as the first part, with the sanctions and grievances being the part that follows. Exchequer is your treasurer. Oversee and record the branch expenditures, doing budgeting or reports, like we said, tracking all of the financials for the organization, doing the basic, this is what we have, this is what we own, and making sure that the depreciation is tracked and all of the contracts are signed, and if the lease for the crown is taken care of when a prince or princess takes possession of the crowns, all that. Peerages, lifetime organizational award. You deal with coaching and advisory capacity. You have expertise in organization, martial arts or knights or mods, sports member. I'm sorry, that probably should be safety officer, but that could also lead to marshals, MARSHAL. You are, again, teaching, mentoring, coaching. Maybe you have a physical regimen that you have implemented for yourself, and you've taught to other people. If you've done A&S projects, if you're a rural artistic recreator, teacher, you're a mentor, you've done research and documentation, you've done writing, if you're doing if you're preparing documentation and you're doing the big write-ups and stuff. And again, if you're starting to do web publication of your A&S stuff, or you're turning your fighting videos maybe into a YouTube channel now, Or as Oswin is doing, he is now conducting online training and being the coordinator for online training classes. That is all absolutely usable. Is
See
there
how
anything?
easy it is, really. I mean, those are big words for me just sitting here.
I know, but it's a huge thing. And honestly, I don't know if you know, but there's actual online event management services. And people pay these people like thousands of dollars to run their online meeting.
In the wrong place, man.
I know this because I'm starting to do research into online conference management services, because my company has decided that we want to focus on the content for our conference as opposed to trying to focus on the technical aspects of it. And while we are a software company, our software is what we want to focus on, and teaching people about that and not making sure that they know how to use the meeting platform correctly. So yeah. But guess what? I get to learn a whole new, like this is a whole new thing. Learning how to present online was a thing that I got to do. I also now not only teach, but also moderate online sessions. And that's been a skill set that I've needed to learn. Like, how do you watch the chat box and make sure that people are getting in, and that you're making sure that everybody is comfortable as a presenter. Because if you're pulling a bunch of different people, how do you communicate to them the expectations, and what it is that they need to do to come in and teach versus the students that maybe haven't used the platform before and, aren't comfortable necessarily with that. There's things that you don't think about that you're doing, but you are. Is there anything that is not listed here that folks want to bring up?
I had one. I didn't know if you had another slide.
I do have some more, but not of this table. This table was kind of the.
So if you've judged A&S competitions, that's a good skill to put in there too. You've graded to a rubric, perhaps. I'm going to do this from the mid-realm. I don't know how other kingdoms do it, but you've probably graded to a rubric. You've given feedback. You've evaluated the quality of somebody's work in an impartial way. Those are, depending on the position you're going for, those are good skills to put in there that, hey, I've done this, I understand this. You tell me I've got to evaluate this thing and this is the criteria. I've done that before. I know what it looks like.
So constructive criticism absolutely is a skill that's developed when you're doing A&S judging. Also, the other thing I was going to list is things like if you have sat at the gate at Troll, you've done customer service. I mean, sure. If you've served Feast, you've done customer service. So it's everything from the things that, like I said, serving Feast and working at Troll, or being a lady in waiting, or a royal guard. You're literally like an executive assistant there for a little bit to the person in charge of the event. Every single thing is a learning experience and something that you can pull on. It's just, you have to be creative in how you present it. And, don't get stuck in the, it's SCA, so obviously it's not relevant because we're a history organization. No, it really, really is. Okay, so I actually have a couple of examples. One of them was pulling, the first two were from Making the SCA Work for You, which is, something that I referenced in the last slide. This was, they list the SCA, they say this is the time period. These are actual examples from resumes. Held various positions. They list the fact that it was an international nonprofit of 20 organized territories, as opposed to listing, 20 kingdoms, because, with over 30,000 members residing in countries around the world. Responsibilities included managing large events. There they have the size, 300 to 2,000, including rental, programming and scheduling, budget oversight, contract negotiation, vendor management. They list how many people they worked with, training, coaching, and mentoring, consulting subject matter expert on research projects, accounting manager responsible for an annual 20K budget. What does that sound like? Probably a Kingdom Exchequer.
Or somebody who's running a war.
A war, yeah. Maybe like Australia, well, or no, probably not that big, but a pretty decent sized event.
Or a large weekend event, maybe.
Yeah. So great. I have no idea how big Great West War is. I don't. So the next is using the Shadowlands Office as an example. So this is a person that's SCA Inc. 2010 to present, recruiter and onboarding coordinator. So there you go, bringing in new people in the location Seattle, part of Washington, Oregon, and the Canadian, British Columbia operations territory. This is the area that they worked in. So on tier. It's an international nonprofit with over 30,000 members residing in countries around the world. And their experience included advertising and marketing, community outreach and education, event planning and workshop planning. So responsible for retention initiatives, such as a mentoring system. Do you have an adopt a newcomer program? There it is right there. Liaison with special interest groups for new members, creating and managing an online community portal, inventory management, such as marketing collateral. Are you creating it, or are you managing the inventory of like the flyers that you hand out and the business cards? Annual metrics reporting, how many people came to your meeting, from the event that you did, from the demo that you did, managing an annual budget. Those are all part of a Shadowlands office. And that is actually could be applicable to a local Shadowland right there. And it sounds pretty damn impressive right there. I'm just saying. Okay, so, and the third, it's from Mistress Katerina Peregrine, who is actually there in the mid-realm now. She was here in Windmasters when I initially taught this class, and she is the one who said, oh, you know what, I listed as community service. And she was talking about the time that she was the mid-realms chronicler. So she listed as social media director. I'm sorry, I apologize. This is when she was social media person for 50 year for the mid-realm. So currently social media director for worldwide 50th anniversary campaign. And the former positions, Midwest managing editor, supervising a monthly membership newsletter. That's when she was the chronicler for the mid-realm, and over 100 local and regional newsletter and website editors, PR and public demonstration coordinator for Akron, newsletter editor for Cleveland and Canton, Worcester, etc., event coordinator for region events, event staff for local, Ohio regional, and Midwest regional. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So. And then these are the two main articles that I pulled from with the links to them. And then, like I said, I also pulled some personal experience and some other input from other persons that I've worked with in the past, one of them being Katerina. So are there any questions? I know there's a lot of like, I just didn't think of it that way, because that's what I usually get when I teach this class is, you know, that's a really good point. Or I just didn't think to term it, to twist it in that manner.
You guys are free to open your mics and ask questions directly.
Or like, do you have experience that you want to try to turn into something specifically? Oh, you've written letters of recommendations for skating for, I have as well. And yes, I have put SCA people as references in my job searches. I do make sure that I know absolutely use their legal name, because it's really awkward for somebody to call you at work and ask for the SCA name. Bad plan. But yes, I have written letters of recommendation for people's work within the organization. And in fact, I had a really good friend she went from being Kingdom Seneschal and found that she loved working with law and ended up going to law school and is now a practicing private attorney. And totally used her Kingdom Seneschal experience to help bump her and get her into law school because she was going back to school a little later in life. I've had people call me for references. I've given written references. Yes, you can have a copy of my PowerPoint. I can put it up on my Google Drive and Osmond can publish it. I don't have an issue with that. I'll probably share it as a PDF if y'all don't mind, as opposed to a PowerPoint. It's just a little easier.
With that, send me the link and I'll attach it to the Facebook Live video that's on the community page.
I can do that.
I'm sure if you email Adriana, she'll be happy to send you the link as well.
Yeah, I've become a queen of using Google Drive. So I'm also really really big fan of Google Forms. And, like I said, I also deal with social media and online communications a lot. So is there any other questions specifically?
I don't have a question, but I do have another insight to share that so one of the things that I found great about translating SCA experience to corporate experience is low risk in the SCA. You can be an event steward and usually you're going to have people backing you up or helping you out. So if it doesn't work out and you're not comfortable with that experience, there's low risk. But if you succeed, you can build on that and then it translates very well to adding to your resume. And the other great thing is it's not resume. This is hopefully you've got the interview. Okay, you've put all this great stuff on your resume. Those questions that everyone hates, like, well, tell me about a situation that went wrong.
Yeah.
You're in the SCA long enough, you're going to have plenty of stories of things that didn't work out quite right, and you had to figure out how to make it work right at the end. So you got a lot of great anecdotal stories you can tell of, this is how I took a bad situation and made it into a good situation.
And I do tend to use more academic terms when I do refer to SCA relatable experiences. If it has to do something more like ANS related, I may call it living history or archaeology, experimental archaeology, as opposed to medieval recreationist. That's just something that if you were dealing with a more professional manner, historic educational organization, or like I said, experimental archaeology. If I'm doing, I also happen to volunteer at Jamestown. I'm a costume interpreter at Jamestown Settlement in Virginia. And one of my favorite things to do is cook over an open fire. And the fact that I can say I've done experimental archaeology and I've done the research into recipes that then I use to prepare meals over the fire. So I've taken and done research from period sources that I then apply, choose the ingredients, try to figure out how it is that it's supposed to be prepared, actually do it, and then share the experiences with other people. That's totally applicable. In that I've done research, I've carried it through to a project, I've applied the skill, and then had an outcome that I shared with other people. But using, like I said, experimental archaeology or living history tends to go over a little bit better when it comes to that sort of thing. So, yeah. I totally haven't hit on everything. I know that some sitting baronage have used their listed their experience as regional PR officer, I think is what Osmond recommended. I think that's how I listed it on my LinkedIn. I'd have to go back. because I was landed for like 5 years. And I think that is actually how I listed it. It was like regional PR director or something like that. There's a lot of different things that you can, leverage. As much as sometimes I hate corporate speak, it can benefit you in certain situations. Are there any other questions? We're coming up right on 9 o'clock, so I just want to make sure that I have addressed everything that may have been asked.
Yeah, I think you got everything in the chat.
Okay.
Because I did try to bump in there as they came up when you probably couldn't see it on the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Your call. You can leave it open for a little while if people would like to take their mics off. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Let's do a last call for any questions. And I do know a number of people that are in challenging situations when it comes to trying to apply to new jobs because of the current job climate. I don't know how else to say that. That they may be looking at different fields that they haven't in the past, or they may just, be trying to figure out whatever it is that they can use to apply for something, to just get a job. I am very lucky that I have had steady employment with my current company, and I have a very, very supportive company. We actually have 5 Scadians or former Scadians out of the 15 of us on staff. So it was actually very, very helpful for me to come in with that support network, and it made me a lot more comfortable. But I have very much learned and had supervisors that were willing to support me in, hey, I tried this thing at university and I want to apply it to what I'm doing here. And they went, you know what? Do it. My immediate supervisor is a Laurel in the SCA. And so he completely gets it. And that helps. But even if he wasn't, if I were able to come in and say, I've been working with this international nonprofit and I've been doing large events. I mean, the last fall University for Atlantia had 700 people attend, and we had 150 classes over 7 hours in one day. And I managed a team of 7, 8, a lot of people to make that happen. And now I can come into my online conference in June and say, look, I'm coming out of 2 different experiences with this, and this is what I want to try. And I think my supervisor is going to be very, very much more comfortable with that fact going into it because of that. Okay, so Joan, Ekaterina, you're a librarian in Florida, and you're going to back to school for anthropology. Yes, we will be publishing the PowerPoint. And I'm going to put that up for you. I went to library school after I got a job with a library software company, so I've never actually worked for a library, but it is very definitely a passion of mine. So yay for librarians. And actually library work and library research is applicable across the board to a number of different jobs. So don't just think it will plug you into just library work. And like I said, doing research for ANS projects, that is being able to do online research and using databases and knowing how to construct search terms and evaluate resources and do information literacy and be able to tell the difference between a primary, secondary, and tertiary source, and knowing how to tell whether a source is from a reputable whether a resource is reputable or not is huge. And especially we're wrestling with some things in our modern world right now where misinformation and disreputable sources versus reputable sources is a big factor. So being able to say, I know how to evaluate information, and I know how to tell the difference between a well-versed, well-written article with a number of different resources behind it. And I know how to do the searching to find that is huge. And that, like I said, is across the board, probably just about any position you apply for.
Yeah, I don't know if you see above that, there's a question, touch on soft skills and transferable skills. Do you have any insights on that?
Soft skills, communications, absolutely. Active listening. We were talking about earlier the conflict resolution, working with different personalities. I think for me, that's one of the most challenging things that I've had to learn how to do is not everybody thinks like me, and being able to collaborate with people that have different goals and different skill sets and learning how to meld them together to make something go. As chancellor of the university right now, that is something huge that I've had to learn. Like, I've never managed a team really before this. It outside of, okay, I take that back. Now that I look at it, I'm like, I was a landed baroness, I was a seneschal, I was an event steward. So obviously I managed a team, but professionally, I am a team of one. I am the marketing department for my company. But in the SCA, I've managed people all along. So I really need to claim the fact that, yes, I have been a leader and I have been a team manager, and get that in my head, because even though I don't do it professionally, I do it in the SCA. And that is those soft skills, that communication, that making people work towards a shared goal and doing it so that everybody's productive and feels like they've accomplished something in the end, and feels like they're a valued member of the team. That's another big thing, without asking too much of any one person. Boundaries, that's another thing that I've learned. Boundaries are big. Being able to say what they are, and not just say what they are, but realize when you've hit them and you need to say, I need to stop. That's another huge soft skill.
One I can throw in, if you don't mind, is, and I'm gonna push something I'm sure we both really like, being able to teach, being able to share what you know in a cognizant way with somebody else. A lot of people are afraid of teaching in the SCA. Again, low risk.
Yes.
And it's a place you can practice. So, because invariably in your job life, at some point, you're gonna say, well, train this other person how to do this part, so we have a backup, or you're gonna go on to a new position and you need to get them up to speed so they can do your old position. So this is a great environment to practice teaching and showing someone this is how you do something and getting it all down so you can do it.
At some point, they're probably going to ask you to write down like the steps you did to do something, whether it's part of your job or something else. And writing down the steps for an ANS project helps with doing instructional writing. So, and hi, Katerina Peregrine. Sorry, I just saw that note as well. But there's just so many different things that just think on it. And if you can't really come up with the right words, go to somebody else and bounce it off of them and say, does this sound ridiculous, or does this sound like it's actual, the reality of it? Yeah, technical writing is a huge skill. And doing an ANS documentation is technical writing. Writing instructions for how to register for classes for University of Atlantia is technical writing. Doing the social media posts to promote our event coming up is social media and marketing. It's content management. It's content creation. We create graphics in Canva, and so that's graphic design. I mean, it's not as professional as if I were using like Photoshop or something, but at least I'm going in and I'm manipulating images that I'm then using to, promote my event. Yeah, this is marketing. It's all wrapped up. And it sounds like folks have been getting stuff out of this, so that's good to hear.
It looks like all the questions. It's up to you. You ready to wrap up?
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap. It's 5 after.
Well, thank you very much, Adriana. It looks like it was a wonderful class. People got a lot out of it. We will get that PowerPoint. And I'm going to end the meeting, and that's going to kick you all out. Nothing personal. And we'll be on the YouTube. It'll be on the YouTube channel in a few weeks.
And come to University of Atlantia on February 13th.
Yes, University of Atlantia on February 13th. All right.
Bye,
Thanks.
y'all.
Thank you. That was great.
You're welcome.